Up next on The Reveal.
This mess here stinks to the high heavens. This reeks of the good old boy system.
A hit-and-run driver, an alleged cover-up. The Reveal investigation igniting a social media firestorm.
Why didn't you call 911?
It could be the most dangerous place in your car.
The younger they are, the less likely that seatbelt will ever be put on.
The popularity of Uber and Lyft expose a possible fatal flaw.
You lost $2,900 a month.
Just like that.
Veteran benefits canceled due to mail issues, leaving a mom on the brink of homelessness.
How many other people and veterans is this happening to?
From our Midtown studios in Atlanta, The Reveal begins now with our multi-Emmy and National Mural Award-winning team of investigators.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Faith Abube.
And I'm Rebecca Lindstrom. A Georgia man lay dying in a ditch for more than an hour and nobody called 911.
A Reveal investigation has uncovered troubling details about the deadly hit-and-run crash in Polk County. And the key people involved are public officials. Could anyone have saved the Cedartown man's life?
This is my work truck.
Aaron Key's work truck has become both a symbol of comfort and of pain. On one hand, it keeps him busy so grief doesn't consume him.
I'm a painter.
But it also reminds him every day of his older brother, the only one he had.
I had plans for my brother. He was wanting to work with me, and he was supposed to go with me the next day.
Instead, that day, September 12, 2019, he found out Eric died just 3 miles from home. A driver hit him while he was riding his bicycle down North Main Street in Cedartown.
He's my brother, man. And I wasn't ready for him to go.
Polk County Coroner Tony Brazier also wasn't ready for what he would learn about the crash.
We realized early on that this was going to be a problematic case.
Documents obtained by the Reveal show the driver, Ralph Dover, did not stop after hitting Eric. He kept driving with the hood and the passenger side of his windshield caved in. He drove almost a mile before coming to a stop here in this parking lot. But he didn't call police. He didn't call 911. He called a friend who he'd been hanging out with that evening at the county fair. That friend is attorney and Georgia State Representative Trey Kelly. Here's an old picture of the two of them together on Dover's Facebook page.
The best case scenario, okay, let's say he told them, I think I hit a dog or a deer. Are you going to drive a mile away and call a lawyer? No.
Our investigation shows not only did Dover not call 911, Representative Kelly also did not call 911, despite telling police he saw a bicycle on the side of the road. While Eric laid in the ditch dying, the state representative called Cedartown Police Chief Jamie Newsom at home.
I don't understand that. I don't.
Chief Newsom found out on that call Dover might have hit a person. But the Reveal has learned the police chief did not call for medical help either.
JJ. Good. 21, please, sir.
He called his sergeant on the police radio to call him at home.
He tried to micromanage a 911 call. Not from your home. You can't do that.
Eric laid here alone in the ditch in excruciating pain for almost an hour. Polk County 911 told us they could have been at the scene within 5 minutes.
But by this point in time, we've missed the golden hour.
When the sergeant eventually arrived, he found Eric's ball cap, then his red bicycle. And then the autopsy report says about 100 feet from the site of initial impact, in the ditch, the officer found Eric barely breathing.
Middle-aged white male, possibly struck by a vehicle, faintness of breath, unconscious.
This may turn out to be a fatality.
If Polk 911 had have gotten this call like it should have gotten, this boy might still be alive today. This mess here stinks to the high heavens. This reeks of the good old boy system.
It's just something out of a nightmare that you wouldn't believe that would happen, and that nobody would do nothing.
The Polk County coroner believes someone could have saved Eric. On the death certificate he wrote, Eric died by homicide in a hit-and-run crash. But months since the death, there hasn't been a single criminal charge filed in the case. Not for a hit and run, not for leaving the scene of an accident, not for any of it. Dover hasn't responded to our request for an interview, but we caught up with Chief Newsom.
It is an ongoing investigation, and I'm not at liberty to discuss any of the details.
So you are not able to explain why you didn't call medical services right after?
It's an ongoing investigation.
Representative Trey Kelly had the same response.
Why didn't you call 911 or ask your
Faith.
friend to call 911?
Again, I did alert law enforcement, and again, because
you called the police
I'm sorry,
chief
Faith,
at home.
I'm a potential witness in an ongoing investigation.
If protocols were broken, Brazier wants them brought to light.
I'm not going to allow this to go on my watch. I'll say whoever behind bars before I see this covered up.
A life cut short.
He was very special to me.
And a grieving family left with no answers. Aaron wants to know who will be held accountable.
I just have one question: why? What was more important than my brother's life?
So how does Representative Kelly explain not calling 911?
So he says the driver wasn't sure what he hit when he called him on the phone, so he went to the scene to meet him. And by his own admission, he says he saw a bike in the ditch in the area of the crash, but he still says he wasn't sure if there was a human being involved.
What about the police chief?
We haven't really gotten much of an explanation from him so far, but he did call his sergeant to go to the scene. Of course, this is a rapidly developing story. People are angry about this. You can follow all the updates on 11alive.com.
Coming up on The Reveal. Could a simple warning light save lives? Congress thought so, but 8 years later, some car manufacturers refuse to act. Do you feel like something like that would help you? This year, there is one part of your car that's getting a lot of attention. Regardless of whether you've ever used Uber or Lyft, you can thank the popularity of those rideshare services for spotlighting an overlooked and potentially deadly safety risk. This woman, who we've agreed to call Megan, has been driving for Uber and Lyft for more than 3 years. She knows the value of a 5-star rating, which is why she made this sign. Do people ever notice the sign? Do they say anything about the sign?
People notice the sign almost instantly.
Decked out in lights, it's hard not to see it. Need a bottle of water or have a favorite style of music? She's got you covered.
If she can't clap without her hands, then I don't want that.
This is what they wanted to listen to.
But there is one part of the sign riders don't seem to notice. The one that tells them to buckle up.
The younger they are, the less likely that seatbelt will ever be put on.
Megan records her rides in case there's a problem. So we asked to see her videos, curious just how many people in one weekend chose to buckle up. Out of her 24 rides, less than half wore their seatbelts. She's in your car for close to an hour and at no point put on a seatbelt.
Correct.
Do you think there's just a sense that the backseat's safe?
Yeah, I do.
And it is safe if you wear your seatbelt. If not, in the real world, here is what can happen. A wrong-way driver hit this Roswell family. The impact totaled the front of the car, but it is the 2 passengers in the back, neither wearing a seatbelt, that died.
We know that rear-seated occupants are 8 times as likely to be seriously injured when they're not buckled up.
But the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety found that knowledge isn't doing much to change our behavior, especially when riding in a taxi or rideshare.
They tell us things like it's safer in the back seat, so they don't need to, or they're not in the habit of doing it, or they forget.
In 2017, more than 1,000 unrestrained passengers died nationwide. A safety audit released by Uber noted 23 of its own riders killed in crashes. The report doesn't say whether passengers were wearing seatbelts, but Megan says from her own experience, it's not likely.
We were coming to a red light and she lost her balance and she hit her hand on the headrest and she grabbed my hair when she was going to go back.
With more than 3 billion rides last year, according to Uber and Lyft, there's just a lot more people riding in the back seat.
I have served as a firefighter for 3 decades, and I have been to more car accidents than I can ever remember. And I have been there when we've had to call the coroner.
Still, until Senator John Alberts chaired a study committee last fall,
Can I see your license?
he thought the state simply needed more PSAs. Now he supports legislation to join 30 other states, extending click it or ticket to adults riding in the back seat. What happened during that study committee that kind of changed your mind?
I think it was the abundance of ongoing evidence showing why this made sense.
Megan believes a law would give her more authority to nudge riders to put on their seatbelt without damaging her rating, a precious commodity for those who want to keep their job. But she says a simple warning light in her car could also help. In 2012, Congress mandated manufacturers extend the same warning system for the front seat to the back. But that hasn't happened.
That has not happened yet.
Any idea why the delay?
I think that is a question for NHTSA.
NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Last year, only 13% of cars sold in the U.S. had the technology. And it wasn't until advocacy groups sued the government that 7 years later, NHTSA opened the idea for public comment. Do you feel like something like that would help you?
Well, you know, the front seatbelt one has caused people to wear it from the dinging, so yeah.
Megan isn't the only one on board. Every response submitted supports the idea, including car manufacturers, as long as NHTSA maintains the same standards as Europe, where they already require it.
I lost a friend who was ejected, so I definitely, always am mindful of wearing mine, because if he would have wore his, he'd be here today.
So where does that bill stand right now?
It's in the Public Safety Committee. No word yet on when it will be heard, but Senator Alberts says even if it does pass, raising awareness, those PSAs are still going to be important.
What about NHTSA? Are they looking at any other safety proposals other than the seatbelt warning system?
Safety advocates would really like them to look at the seatbelts themselves. The ones in the front are more advanced to cushion the impact of a crash, but that technology isn't always being used throughout the car.
Coming up on The Reveal.
Driving, vomiting in the car because I'm panicked and I'm stressed.
The VA's long history of problems in processing mail left one veteran desperately trying to keep her home.
Welcome back to The Reveal. A mom is almost homeless after the government makes a huge mistake with her veteran benefits.
An investigation by our sister station in Minneapolis exposes a large-scale problem with the VA mail system that's now putting veterans at risk.
But I keep these dog tags as a reminder that no one will ever take my voice again.
A United States Marine for 15 years, Staff Sergeant Maria Jewell's service was cut short.
I'm 100% service connected for post-traumatic stress due to military sexual trauma.
A single mom and college student trying to rebuild her life, Maria raves about the psychologists who've treated her at the Minneapolis VA, but says the same agency she trusted with her care put her and her teenage daughter on the brink of homelessness.
Here's my bedroom set.
Desperately selling their furniture online and even her daughter's clothes.
She was selling her dress.
The family car loaded with other belongings, destined for a consignment shop. All this just to put food on the table. Why? Because in November, Maria says, with no warning, VA slashed her benefits. Her VA records clearly show her PTSD disability rating went from 100% to 0, and benefits for knee injuries were also reduced. That meant her $3,500 a month check dropped to just $600.
You lost $2,900 a month?
Yes, just like that. And here I sit, can't pay my rent, facing eviction.
The VA told her it was her own fault, claiming she'd failed to show up for a mandatory reevaluation exam she'd been repeatedly notified about by mail. But there's a problem. The VA sent her mail to the wrong address.
And I never received mail, so how can I respond to mailing that I never received?
Veterans' rights attorney Brian Lewis took Maria's case pro bono, calling the whole situation outrageous.
How I would really describe it, I can't say on TV.
Just what happened is buried in Maria's VA file, which she has since gotten her hands on. Here's the timeline. On April 6, 2018, VA requested a medical review of Maria's PTSD. That internal record correctly listed Maria's address in Lakeville. But on May 21st, when VA mailed Maria this letter, labeled important about scheduling the examination and warning if she didn't do it, they would stop or reduce payments, it was sent to Vergas, Minnesota, a place Maria hadn't lived in 5 years. Fast forward a year, and on August 20th, 2019, VA again sent mail to that wrong address in Vergas. It states, "We made a decision on your VA benefits," and her post-traumatic stress disorder, currently evaluated as 100% disabling, was being reduced to 0% effective November 1st.
100 to 0. Like, how does that make sense?
Maria had no clue what had happened until November, when the money wasn't in her bank. Unable to pay rent, eviction proceedings were filed in court. Maria says her PTSD symptoms flared.
Driving, vomiting in the car because I'm panicked and I'm stressed.
The VA has a long history of problems handling mail, even sending out this press release last year noting they detected inconsistencies with how veterans' permanent mailing addresses are being updated and stored. And sometimes there's evidence like this, that the VA doesn't send letters at all. Carol Evans' investigation of improper ER bill denials led VA Inspector General Michael Missel's office to discover years worth of mail piling up in processing centers around the country.
The VA just ignored the mail.
And now, attorney Brian Lewis says the VA ignored the fact they had Maria's correct address all along.
Her address was always correct.
Maria's Minneapolis VA doctors backed that up, writing this letter stating her contact information have been consistently up to date. The VA backed down and reinstated Maria's benefits, but not until after her lawyer got involved. And days away from being forced out of her home, her landlord agreed to stop the eviction process. But Maria is left with a burning question.
How many other people and veterans is this happening to?
Despite the VA's own documents that you just saw, Susan Carter, VA's Director of Media Relations, sent us an email stating it's false to say Maria's PTSD rating was dropped to 0. It's false to say VA had her correct Lakeville address in their system, and she claims they took appropriate steps to notify Maria of changes to her benefits. Maria's lawyer said of that VA statement, "It's the sort of thing that will help my flowers grow." For The Reveal, I'm AJ Legault.
If you have a news tip or a comment on one of our investigations, email us at thereveal@11alive.com.
Thanks for watching The Reveal, the nation's only weekly local investigative show.
We'll see you next Sunday for another edition of The Reveal.